Welcome to the LDN radio show, brought to you by the LDN Research Trust. I'm your host, Linda Elseygood. I have an exciting lineup of guest speakers who are LDN experts in their field. We will be discussing low-dose naltrexone and its many uses in autoimmune diseases, cancers, etc. Thank you for joining us. At Town & Country Compounding Pharmacy in Ringwood, New Jersey, owner, Pharmacist John Herr and his team are passionate about low-dose naltrexone. They have compounded LDN for over 15 years and are committed to compounding high-quality medications and serving as an educational resource for patients and practitioners alike. Visit tccompound.com. Today I'm joined by Pharmacist John Herr, and he's from New Jersey in the US. Thank you for joining me today, John.
Oh, you're welcome. Glad to be able to spend this time with you.
Good. And I didn't mention where you're from, and you're from Town & Country Compounding. So, first of all, tell us how you got into working as a pharmacist. I mean, had you always been interested in pharmacy as a child?
Well, yeah, I've always been interested in pharmacy, and I've always been interested in like natural medicine, or as we now call it, integrative medicine or functional medicine. But back in the day, I think we called it natural. And I was just lucky. I went to St. John's University in New York City, and I made the acquaintance of a physician she was actually from really a pioneer in bringing natural or bioidentical progesterone into the United States. So back then I was still in pharmacy school, and I started like working with patients with bioidentical progesterone. And it just kind of changed the way that I thought as a pharmacist. And I really consider myself really like an integrative pharmacist now. So low-dose naltrexone to me was just a natural progression of my knowledge and my interest.
Mm-hmm. So how long would you say that you've been compounding LDN now?
Oh my God, I think it's got to be around 2000 or 2002, just when it was really becoming, people were starting to understand it. It's interesting. I had one of my patients, when I had my retail pharmacy, she ended up writing a book about it, about her husband. It was called Up the Creek with a Paddle. Mm-hmm. And Mary Bradley and she had been in my pharmacy, and her husband at the time had MS, and we were talking about it, and I recommended the low-dose naltrexone to her, and then she went and sought out Dr. Bahari, and, she started, they started her husband on that for his MS, and that's where my original interest was, and she ended up writing the book, Up the Creek with a Paddle, and my biggest claim to fame is I'm mentioned in the book as the one who told her about, researching low-dose naltrexone, and then subsequently, after that, I became acquainted with a gentleman named Fritz Bell, who started, a website, Good Shape, because back then people were just, going on the internet and they were buying the 50 milligram tablet and trying to, create their own. So, Fritz had a big interest in that, and I filled prescriptions for his wife, but I also filled prescriptions for people where basically Fritz donated it to them, because he wanted people to be able to take the medication and not have to compound their own. So if they qualified to his standards, we would make it up and, send it out no charge so those patients could start on the low-dose naltrexone. So I go back way to the beginning. And, I think back then we just thought of low-dose naltrexone, honestly, for MS. But, subsequently over the years, we've just learned, how vast the different disease states we can treat and manage with low-dose naltrexone.
Mm-hmm. And what forms do you compound LDN in?
Well, the most typical is a capsule, which we do an immediate release capsule. We're in the process of buying switching over to like a tablet so that we can, meet the need, with a tablet machine. But right now we make capsules. We also make, we've actually done it transdermally. I treat a lot of children on the autistic spectrum disorder. We've had to do it in sublingual liquid for some of the children. We have a couple patients on it right now, believe it or not, in a vaginal cream. We've also used it transdermally for like neuropathic pain on different areas of the body. And I've been researching some articles recently on using it as an ophthalmic drop for chronic dry eyes. So I've been talking to a couple different integrative physicians about using it, but up to this point, we haven't had anybody try it for the ophthalmic. But I'll keep everybody appraised when we do, because there's a lot of interest in using it for that function as well.
And I know that there are some dentists that are also using LDN, so that's another interesting one. And how about ultra-low dose naltrexone? Is that used in your area that you cover?
Well, we have some patients on it. We also do a lot of pain management. We manage intrathecal pumps in the home, so I work with a lot of doctors who, pain doctors, and I actually work with a Dr. Datta, who's speaking at the next conference in Portland, and so I work with his patients, and we have to start a lot lower on his patients because many of them are on opioids, and I've worked with some pain physicians where we've actually compounded it as low as 100 microgram capsules, because I think you really need a physician, who is trained in pain management, because they're actually weaning the patient off of the opioid as they're bringing the LDN up very gradually, and it's a real balancing act because you are going to detox that patient. So that's not something I would recommend for your, like a general practice physician to use. But we do have a lot of patients that are using it that way, where they're getting off of this. And then we just get tremendous feedback when they're off of the opioids, how they're then maintaining the pain with LDN that we consider, on the standard dose that we consider for pain. But it is a little tricky to get them off of those, off the opioid while you're bringing the low-dose naltrexone up to the appropriate dose.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I've interviewed several pain specialists, and they seem to be using 0.001, which must be like a grain of sugar of naltrexone. And they explain...
Well, that would...
Sorry, carry on.
0.001 micrograms, is that, Linda?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
That's almost homeopathic.
Exactly. But by doing that and using it alongside the opioid, it makes the opioid stronger so that they can reduce the opioid and slowly increase by 0.001, sort of, I think they do like sort of every day kind of thing, until they can bring the opioid really down and the LDN can take over. And they're having it, by doing it so slowly, as you can imagine, well, slowly by my thinking, or rather fast by my thinking. They say it's slow, but it does seem to happen quite quickly, where they get them off the opioids and they haven't gone through withdrawal, they haven't had any side effects, and the LDN, like you were saying, can be used in place of the opioids and give pain relief. It's just amazing to me that something so small, that's not harmful or toxic or even expensive, can work so well.
Yeah, it is amazing. I mean, I think we just, like I said, when I first started working with it, we just kind of thought of it for like autoimmune, but now now that we know that it's working on the immune system, and we know it's working on, with the upregulation of endorphins, and we know that it's working on the toll-like receptors for inflammation, and now that we see how it affects dopamine for depression, I just think it's just amazing to me how many opportunities there are out there for physicians to learn how they can better treat their patients for numerous, disease states.
Mm-hmm. And of course, most people that have an autoimmune condition, one of the underlying problems is the inflammation, isn't it? So by reducing that inflammation alone helps the person feel so much better anyway, especially with the boost of endorphins as well.
Oh, yeah. My wife, who's a pharmacist, is the perfect example. Like, she went and had all this blood work done, and what they call her ANA level was through the roof. So your traditional physician would look at that and say, oh, you must have rheumatoid arthritis, because she was getting, it wasn't really achy joints, but she was getting pain, almost like fibromyalgia pain. And so we knew it was inflammation. And at the same time, her blood pressure was uncontrollable. It was, we actually had her on a heart monitor. And then one of the physicians that we work with, when they did, we really started working more in depth, and they did the food allergies, we found out she was severely allergic to dairy. So, started her on, obviously an elimination diet, and then low-dose naltrexone, which she titrated up gradually to a dose of about 4.5 milligrams, but the ANA level came down. Obviously with inflammation, all the inflammation, the markers went down, the pain went away. And the funny thing is, like, we had to get her off that blood pressure medication really quick because her pressure was just dropping. So now she's just on LDN and, obviously supplements and,
yes.
and dietary changes, but there's no more blood pressure medication needed, and she doesn't have the pain anymore. So it's an example of, the LDN is a tool, but you still have to take into account all of the other things that are going on, such as diet, nutrition, exercise. I always try to tell people it's a package deal. The LDN is one of the most important pieces, but there's other things that you can do for your health.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. I used to have to take omeprazole for acid reflux. And if I didn't take it, I was in trouble. It was that severe. But by going gluten-free, I now don't have any problems at all. I don't have to take the medication. I don't have any acid reflux at all. But if I go out to eat, and you know what it's like, you going through the menu and say, well, it doesn't look as though there'd be any gluten-free in this. Could you check with the chef for me? And they'll come back and say, no, there's no gluten in it. If there is, I don't sleep that night. The acid reflux is so bad and I have to sit upright. If not, I'm just going to vomit. It's terrible. So I don't always believe people when they tell me there's no gluten in, because I know if there's any gluten in it. Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? How you can just eliminate other medications just by diet. My husband has problems with his skin on his hands. He's allergic to milk. And he'd seen so many different doctors in the past, and nobody could tell him why the palms of his hands would go like white and dry. But when he eliminates dairy, his skin is completely normal. And that was like 30 years of trying to find out what was wrong with his skin and never had an answer.
Well, yeah, that's why my thing when I give talks on this, I always tell people, patients, or if I'm talking to groups of physicians, whoever it might be, I say, at least I know in the United States, I say, we say that we're in healthcare in the United States, but we really are not. We're in sick care. Our system in this country is, I hate to say it, but it's run by big pharma. So, our physicians many of them are trained to wait until the patient presents with a disease and then give a pharmaceutical remedy for that disease, whereas in integrative medicine or using things like LDN, I think, we're trying to get at the underlying cause and how can we correct that so that we can live healthier.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's quite common for people to tell me that the doctors are only treating their symptoms, but not the root cause. So, of course, you then end up with all these medications, and some people are taking in between 14, even 22 different medications a day. And some of those are only needed because the cocktail of drugs that they're taking cause side effects. But that's okay, because they'll give you another tablet which will combat the side effects from the cocktail you're taking.
Yeah, well, I think, Linda, your example of your omeprazole was the perfect example there. That drug was originally made for somebody who had an active ulcer. And then you theoretically would take it for, 2 or 3 months to allow it to heal, and then change your diet and go on. But now people just live on that drug, the purple pill. It's like they have to take it forever, which, it affects, then you're affecting your gastric pH, your digestion. It's a slippery slope. So I agree with you 100%.
And of course, I also have people telling me that it's expensive to eat healthily. And especially when you've got children, it seems so sad. And I can understand if you only have a limited amount of money and you've got several children and they all need feeding. But we call them crisps, you call them chips over there. And we have biscuits, you call them cookies. But you get where I'm coming from. That is cheaper than buying apples and pears and bananas and oranges and such, which would be a healthier option. But the price difference is quite amazing, isn't it? And especially if you have mass-produced meat from a supermarket, or you're buying organic local meat or vegetables, the price difference is quite high, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's much harder to try and eat organic and healthy. You're right, and then you see the commercials where McDonald's is offering the dollar meal menu. I'm thinking like, oh please don't even eat there. But you do understand some people, the socioeconomic, they don't have that choice. But everybody can make little changes, I believe.
Yes.
And that's what we try to educate them on.
Mm-hmm.
And as you mentioned, I mean, just the cost of medication. Like it's gotten, even when they're covered by insurance in our country, many patients can't afford their medications because their copay is so high. Whereas with low-dose naltrexone, I'm such a big believer in it. I work with Dr. Dada, who explains to me that his patients are chronic pain patients, so a lot of them are disabled, or they don't have a large income. So once we have them titrated to their dose, that's the dose that they're going to be on for their pain, then we dispense like a 90-day supply at a cost that in most cases is lower than their copay, because we just believe in the therapy so much that we want to help the patients and make it available to them.
What about shelf life on your capsules? How long do they last?
Well, the USP governs that in our country, so okay. I imagine they would last longer, but we're, only allowed to put 180 days on there from the date that we make it.
Okay.
Now, certainly as a pharmacist, I think it would last a lot longer, but because it's compounded, the USP, which is the United States Pharmacopoeia, which is basically overseen by the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, limits us to 180 day, what we call a beyond use date or expiration date. So if most people are getting a 90-day supply, they'll certainly, it's going to fall within that date range.
Mm-hmm. I understand. And so that would be the same for tablets as well, once you start making those, if that is the rules and regulations of the land, the 180
Correct.
days.
That's for a solid dosage form. And now once you go into anything that was a liquid, for example, now if I had to make it for a young child in a liquid format, then we would be restricted, believe it or not, to a 14-day supply.
Really? 14?
But you can also do testing, so you can test that it's stable to extend that beyond use date. But most of the patients we see are using the solid oral dosage forms, the capsules or the tablets.
Yes.
So it's usually not that much of a problem.
Mm-hmm. And what fillers do you use?
Well, typically, like most people, we use Avicel, which is just an inert starch that people do not have, any problems with. But because we my pharmacy, we're only compounding, so we work with a lot of functional medicine and integrative practitioners. So if we have a person who did have like what we call chemical sensitivities, a lot of times I don't think that they're going to be allergic to the to the low dose naltrexone, but it could be the filler. Mm-hmm. So sometimes what we'll do is we'll give them different filler. We might give them some Avicel capsules. We might give them some acidophilus capsules, or sometimes we'll use a vitamin, nutritional that we know that they can take. Mm-hmm. And then we'll have them take the, capsule, for about a week or so with no naltrexone in it, just to make sure that they're not having any type of, reaction to the filler. Mm-hmm. So, typically we do Avicel, but, for specific patients, if they have chemical sensitivity, we will adapt it to, what will agree with that particular patient.
And what about
especially if they practice kinesiology. I have a couple patients and practitioners that, practice kinesiology, so they can sometimes they can tell which fillers or, will react to a patient even just from, if you understand kinesiology, how it works in the body versus even after taking it to see if they have a side effect.
Okay. And what about the capsules? Are they sort of a vegan-free capsule?
Yes, we can get they're a vegetable base, so they're not typically they come gelatin or vegetable, so we can get either. Mm-hmm. And our goal is to go at least eventually to the tablets once we have the tablet machine running correctly. But with the tablet, unfortunately, you have to kind of make a couple strengths. It's not that you can just, I can just run or make a run of, if it was a strange or an odd strength, let me just make 30 or 100 of those. You have to do that in bigger batches. So I don't think we'll ever not be also making capsules. Mm-hmm. As you said, if you have those patients that need the ultra-low dose, or patients who, they just fall, everybody used to think it was 4.5 milligrams like religion, but now we know some patients do better with 9 milligrams. Some patients do better on 3 milligrams. So I envision that we'll always be, compounding capsules. But we'll also, for those patients that are taking the more common dose, we'll have the availability of the, tablets so we can keep up with the demand because, myself being in, this metropolitan area of New York City, New Jersey, I just, there's so many patients who need this treatment.
Mm-hmm. And what area do you cover? Before we started, you said the Manhattan area. So could you just explain exactly where you cover?
Oh, sure, yeah. In the United States, again, the FDA requires that you have to be licensed as a pharmacist in any state that you're going to send, medication into. Mm-hmm. And low-dose naltrexone is considered a prescription medication in our country. So, you have to be licensed in those states. So I've concentrated my licenses in the Northeast. So I, work in areas such as, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, in this area of the Northeast. Mm-hmm. But, previously I was president of IACP, which is the International Academy of Compounding Pharmacists. So I know pharmacists all over the country. And a lot of times I'll get a request for, low-dose naltrexone in another state. So I always know, a good colleague that I can refer that prescription to if I have a request and it's a state that I'm not licensed in. And compounding pharmacists generally kind of like to network and share ideas with one another, which, it's very collegial, which is something that, really makes me enjoy the profession. So I do many instances, I send prescriptions that I get to people I know in other states because I'm not licensed in that state. So we always try to make sure the patient gets their medication.
And since you've been compounding LDN for so many years, has anybody ever reported to you any adverse effects that may be unusual?
I have this one patient, and then she's come to 3 of my seminars, and her husband's a physician, but she just has a funny reaction to the naltrexone. And we've tried ultra-low dose and everything, but it really just upsets her. It upsets her stomach, her head. She just doesn't feel right on it. And I mean, she's tried it so many times because it just, she's read so much about it, and her husband, who being a practitioner, she's our one patient that's just tough to treat. But other than that, we get the typical side effects you see, which are the, the vivid dreams, the stomach upset, maybe a slight little headache. But typically we just work with those patients and tell them that you need to start the dose slow and titrate up gradually. So we've actually put together a titration kit, for patients, because many of the doctors don't realize that. Many doctors hear about low-dose naltrexone, and they just, they think they can simply write a prescription for a 4 milligram or a 4.5 milligram. So we'll go in and educate those physicians that we have this titration kit that we go up gradually, and once the patient gets to be on, the dose that seems effective for he or she, we'll then compound it into that particular strength. So I think that's really helped a lot for patients to, avoid the side effects and get to their particular individualized dosage.
Well, I've been on LDN since 2003. And at that time, over here anyway, we were given 3 milligrams for a month, and then you went on to 4.5, and that was it. But the dropout rate was really high, starting on 3 milligrams, because we have found now that some people, 2 milligram is as high as they can go. So you can imagine starting on 3, it was a no-go from the start, it was far too high for them. But now, depending on what the condition is, it might be as low as 0.5 milligrams starting or 1.5. But doing it gradually and slowly, we find that not many people drop out of taking it. They seem to tolerate it really well and notice benefits quite quickly.
Oh, I agree with you, Linda, 100% on that. And then the other thing, I always try to caution patients on, is that don't give up on it. Because sometimes, even though maybe they didn't get any side effects, the patient thinks they're not getting the effect from the low-dose naltrexone. And it's funny, we had 2 women. They were girlfriends, I guess that's how you say it. And they both had a similar condition, around the same age, and they went to the same physician. Both started on the titration kit, and the one woman that she got to 3.5 milligrams, and she was just feeling wonderful. And the other lady kept going up, and she got to 4.5, and she wasn't experiencing any relief from her, what she was trying to treat. But we just told her, you got to stick with it. And, she was discouraged because her girlfriend was, she was not even 30, it's about 30 days, and she was feeling well, and she wasn't getting any benefit that she perceived. And lo and behold, it took 4 months, and then she started to get the relief. So the other thing is, like, even though, you start low on the dose and titrate, which, we agree 100%, you also have to make sure the patient realizes that sometimes it could take 6 months before the low-dose naltrexone really starts to show differences in their body. And I always try to caution patients, depending on the disease that they're trying to treat or the condition they're trying to treat, I tell them, look, this didn't happen to you overnight. This whole thing was probably going in your body for a long period of time. So, you're thinking traditional medicine, like, you had a toothache and somebody gave you Tylenol with codeine. Of course, it's going to work immediately. But with this, we're trying to upregulate your body and get your body to correct what's going on. So you do have to caution patients that, give it time. I usually recommend give it a good 6 months before you say it's not doing anything for you.
Mm-hmm. Well, we noticed when we did a survey that some people said they had no symptom relief, but their disease stabilised. So, I mean, that's a win in my book if you've managed to stop progression. But then between 15 and 18 months, there was 2% of people, or whatever it was, didn't find symptom relief until they'd been taking it 15 to 18 months, which is a really long time. But they had stabilised before then. And only 5% of people at that time were having any side effects at all. But the number of people who have stopped LDN because it probably wasn't working or it was too expensive, but they've stopped. And those people normally come back to me in about 3-4 weeks and say, in actual fact, the LDN was working for me. I'd forgotten that my bladder used to play up. I'd forgotten the pain that I had. I'd forgotten, it wasn't until they'd stopped that they noticed that LDN in actual fact was working for them.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that 100%. I've had another woman we were just counseling who, her, the general, almost like fibromyalgia pain and everything had, was totally, had gone away. Well, she's been on the low-dose naltrexone, but then all of a sudden she's starting to get pain in that, and gotten real nervous, like, oh no, my LDN isn't working for me anymore. I have to have this. This has been a miracle for me. What's going on? But then again, in functional integrative medicine, when we talk to the patient, well, what's going on in your life? We start to see that, now you're going through, you're right in the perimenopause, going into menopause. When are you having the pain? Oh, it's right around my menstrual cycle. Okay, what's happening there? Your estrogen level isn't where it used to be. And we know when women, particularly when their estrogen and their estradiol goes down, they tend to get aches and pains. So maybe it's a matter of, adjusting your estrogen at this point. It's not that the LDN stopped working. So you always have to look at your patients, and that's why the patient always has to go back and, consult with either their compounding pharmacist who can send them back to their physician or their phison. But it's not always just you can't always blame it on the LDN. Sometimes other things, are happening in your life or happening with your body as we age. So that's why I say it's a package deal.
I was asked a question this week, and a gentleman said it would appear on the forums that he's been reading that LDN doesn't work as well for men as it does for women, and was this a hormonal problem? Have you noticed it doesn't work as well for men as women?
It seems, you're right. We have more women that are on low-dose naltrexone, but I don't know why. But as far when we're talking pain, certainly I think it works for both men and women equally well. But when we have other conditions such as fibromyalgia and that, it makes you wonder: is it also something going on with the hormones? Or I think I have a great interest now in Lyme disease and low-dose naltrexone, and we know surely that Lyme disease, affects the pituitary, which is signaling in the body to produce hormones. And also, if you think about chronic pain, when people are in chronic pain, they're not producing their hormones the same. So that's where I think we have to not just think that it's just a panacea and that we can just give low-dose naltrexone, but we have to measure those patients' hormone levels and adjust them accordingly. So And I think, honestly, that maybe what you just elucidated is that, women will tend to, go through menopause, or their hormones will change at a much earlier age than men. So, for a woman, we usually say around age 50, our hormones are trying to change. Men won't happen till later on in life. So maybe it's not a difference, in between males and females as much as is it also something that has to do with the relationship between the hormonal changes and women getting them at an earlier age, that then we're associating that more women do better than men. But in reality, maybe because it's that man still has this testosterone in his body.
Oh, okay.
That makes sense.
It does. And we're now out of time. We'll have to have you back another day. We could have carried on talking there forever. Could you tell people how they can contact you?
Well, certainly you can call us at our pharmacy directly, which is 201-447-2020. And then you can always find us on the internet. Our pharmacy is T as in Tom, C as in cat, compound.com. So it's www.tccompound.com. And from there, you can even email the pharmacist question, or call us directly. And we just love talking to patients, and that's what we do. And we do hold seminars usually monthly on low dose naltrexone, which we we'll post on Facebook and on our website, and make people aware that if they're in the area, that they can come in and see it.
Wow, amazing. Well, thank you very much for all your hard work and for promoting LDN to your patients all these years. Absolutely fantastic, and for educating people. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Linda. I loved talking with you, and looking forward to doing it again.
Thank you. At Town & Country Compounding Pharmacy in Ringwood, New Jersey, owner Pharmacist John Herr and his team are passionate about low-dose naltrexone. They have compounded LDN for over 15 years and are committed to compounding high-quality medications and serving as an educational resource for patients and practitioners alike. Visit tccompound.com. Any questions or comments you may have, please email me, Linda, Linda, at ldnrt.org. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciated your company. Until next time, stay safe and keep well.